For this particular Google homepage, we may have the requirement in this way. The requirement would be Google okay. Google allows only people with valid credentials to log in. So Google allows only the people with valid credentials to log into Google. So this is first requirement. Let's say one Google account is sufficient to log into all the applications under Google. So these are the two requirements. Just for example, so when you look at the first requirement, Google allows only the people with valid credentials to log in. So in this particular login page, we should have only the Google homepage or Google login page should allow only the people who are having valid credentials. So when I said valid credentials, Google should allow only the people with valid credentials, then I have to check this particular login functionality by giving the valid credentials. So it is directly noted from this particular first requirement. So since first requirement says Google allows only people with valid credentials, so directly we have to test for, or let us create a test matrix for this one, RTM. So test scenario ID. So test scenario is nothing but it's how you are going to test. I mean, in how many possible manners you are going to test this particular site. So as the requirement says, it is very direct. So I can directly write verify login to Google account with valid credentials. So this is one way in which I can test this requirement, and I have to test the requirement in another way as well. So what is the another way? It's the negative way. So when Google says it allows only the people with valid credentials, so it directly means that it should not allow invalid credentials. Or now it's your turn to ask it out. So what it should do when someone tries to give invalid credentials. So this is where you have to ask your questions. So you should ask then what should happen if Google or if someone enters invalid credentials. Then it should throw some error messages. Again, in this particular scenario, when I set invalid credentials, what could be invalid credentials? Either username is invalid, or either password is invalid, or either both are invalid, and so on. And if what happens if I try to and also if I continuously give invalid credentials for 3 consecutive times or 2 consecutive times, then Google will give me an image with the data and I have to enter the text into the text field, which is like a confirmation box. So let me just show you that. Actually, this should keep a text box verification field whenever you give wrong password for too many number of times. Let's say 3 times. So, based on this single requirement, you can think in number of ways and come up with different scenarios. So, is it clear? Is it clear how I am deriving different requirements from, different scenarios from requirements? Hello? Is it clear how I am coming up with the scenarios based on the requirement? Yes? No, it will not lock us out, but it will give another screen or in the same screen below password it will give you another image with some text inside image, and we have to identify the letters within that image and we have to enter the details or enter the data in that image at the another box below. Let me just show you. I think it will come for Gmail. That is called as CAPTCHA. So, I mean, based on a single requirement, we have to think in different ways and we have to come up with different scenarios.
And how about if we forget the password, Bharat?
Yeah, that is another requirement. I mean, that you cannot match that requirement with this particular one.
Oh,
Maybe they will give you more number of requirements. Actually, for all the fields in this particular screen, they will give the requirements. They will tell or they will give the requirement in such a way that this particular Google login page, it should have an option or it should have a button to register new users. So which is nothing but sign up button at the top. So they will mention about each and everything in detail as part of the FSD. So if they are going to develop this page or if they are developing this login page for the first time, then they will mention all these details about where a sign up button should be there, where this Google logo should be there, and what are different colors for each and every letter in a logo. Even if you find some difference in the colors, you can raise a defect. You can call it as a defect because it's the logo of Google. So if something is wrong, if some color is wrong in the logo, then it means that logo is not populating properly. So you can raise a defect even if a single color mismatch is observed in the logo. So for this particular requirement, I have come up with different scenarios. So is it clear? Why are we coming up with this different scenarios means we are going to test this particular site in different ways. So we are trying to identify different cases or different scenarios or different ways in which we can test this particular page so that we can identify maximum number of people. So TCID stands for test case ID and this is test case description. So for this particular test scenario, TS underscore 001, which is verify login to Google account with valid credentials. So with valid credentials, let us try to first assign a unique name to the test case. So I named it as TC underscore 001. So under test case description, I should write what am I going to do for this particular test scenario. So for this test scenario, which is verify login to Google account with valid credentials, I should say Again, I can write the same thing here. Yeah, let us write the same thing here. I'll tell you where, in what kind of cases you can change. So let me just go to a new sheet. So I'll tell you how to write a test case. So as I said earlier, what is a test case? Test case is nothing but it is a step by step, or it is a document which tells you the step by step procedure to test something. So in order to test some functionality, we have to follow some steps. So in order to test this Gmail homepage functionality, Gmail login page functionality, first thing is we have to log into this particular Gmail login page, or we have to give this URL in the browser and hit on enter button. So that's how you can at least navigate to this page first, and after navigating we have to test different situations. So each and every test case will also have the same steps. So let us first write this field as test case ID, then test scenario ID, then test case name, test case description. So these are all different fields. Step name, step description, expected result. Your result. So you need not remember all these fields, because as and when you start testing, you will definitely remember all of this. I mean, there is nothing to remember. So this particular second column, test scenario ID, this should have the scenario ID from which we are deriving this test case. So let us try, or let us assume that we are going to write test case for this particular scenario. So since we are writing test case for that particular scenario, we have to give the scenario ID here, and test case ID gives something unique. So test case name, verification of login to Google with valid credentials. Uh, Please don't hesitate to stop me whenever you don't understand something. because this test case designing and test conditioning is very important. So test case name is verification of login to Google with valid credentials. So whatever you feel like writing, just write that name, because all of you know English, all of you know how to frame sentences. So it's nothing but framing sentences based on your own instinct. So under description, I should elaborate this test case name. So how should I elaborate it? It's an overview of what we do in the testing. Launch browser, navigate to Google page, verify login with valid credentials. So this particular step name is you can name each and every step, because I said step by step procedure, because I said it is a sequence of steps. So step name, you can name the step based on what the functionality that you do on the in that particular step. So for now, just forget about step name, but try to write the steps. So what could be the first step? We have to launch the browser, and once the browser is launched, so what is the next step? We have to type the URL. What is the URL? See, whatever we are writing, we are just writing in normal English language. Then when we give valid credentials and hit the enter key, then it will log in, or it will navigate to the original Google image, or it allows us to log into the Google site. So since our test has closed, or since this test case is only about verifying the login functionality, so I say log out or sign out. So we have to sign out from the Google page and close the browser. So these are different steps which we follow as part of testing. But what do we do as part of testing? We have to verify the expected result with the output result. So for each and every step that you do, there should be some expected result. So there is some action associated with launching a browser. So whenever you launch browser, there should be some action which happens from the system's point of view or from the system side. So when you try to launch the browser, what could be the expected result? Browser should launch and navigate to home page. And whenever you type the URL google.com and hit the enter key, Google page, or I can say browser should launch Google homepage. So whenever I use this Google URL, it should take me to the Google homepage. And when I click on the sign in button, then it opens login page. Login page should be launched. Enter valid credentials and hit the enter key or click sign in button. Login should be successful, or we can say user should log into Google successfully. So when I sign out from Google and close the browser, browser window should close. So is it clear how am I writing expected result? So this is how I write expected result. So while testing this particular functionality on the uh, real application, so when you follow these steps, then you will be able to observe the actual outputs and you will be able to you should write the actual result here. So whenever you find something, whenever you launch the browser, so it should launch the browser. So I click on this, so it has launched the browser. So that's how you have to test. So if it launches the browser, then you can directly write it launches browser launched successfully. So whenever you find something or whenever you find the case where this expected or actual result does not match with the expected result, then you have to verify the requirements. So the requirement says, suppose you entered valid credentials and you hit the enter key, but you are not able to log in or it is not allowing you to log in. So in such case, though you have given the proper credentials, you are not able to log in. So that is a deviation from the expected result. So you can raise a defect in such situations. So that's how you have to write the test cases. So coming to step name, you can name the step. Just observe the description. So what is the description? Description says launch browser. So I can name this step as browser launch. Similarly, next step I can name it as Google navigation and so on. But for the sake of simplicity, we write step 1, step 2. We follow this process. Why do we follow this process? Because suppose in this particular step 4 here, if you find some defect or if the actual result is not as per the expectations, so whenever you see that actual result is not as per the expected result, then we have to raise a defect. So in the defect we have to mention the step name as well. So if we mention the step name as step 4, then the people who are looking into this test case will be able to navigate to step 4 directly. But if you write or if you use step names, then they have to search for this step name first. So it is an overhead, and moreover, since it is a step by step or sequential manner, so you can directly uh, use step 1 to, or you can directly use the format step 1, step 2, and so on, so that it would be easy for you to trace different steps. So this is how we write the test case. So if you take another example, so login with invalid credentials, so that is the next scenario. So for this scenario, when I say invalid credentials, what could be invalid credentials? One is maybe the username is not existing in the Google's list. So maybe you are trying to log in with the username which was not yet registered with Google, or you are trying to log in with your user ID but you are giving the wrong password. So there can be two test cases for this particular second scenario. So what are the two test cases? I will write here. Invalid username, invalid password. And what is the second requirement we have? One Google account is sufficient to log into all applications under Google. So it means if you log into Gmail, then from Gmail you should be able to directly navigate to YouTube without logging in again. So we have a bunch of applications under Google. So if you log into one application, then you should be able to log into any other application, or you should be able to use any other application without logging in again. So that is the requirement. So if I log into Google, then I should be able to navigate to Gmail, I should be able to access YouTube without again entering the credentials. But given the condition, it will work only on on same browser. So if you have used Mozilla to log into Google, then within Mozilla browser you can launch or you can access any other application under Google without giving in the credentials again. So I will send you this document. I'll send this document to you. So I want all of you to write or try writing a test case. So just try writing test case for the second scenario. So for the second scenario, as I said, we will have two test cases. So in the sheet 2, or let me just rename the sheet. What is this? This is RT. Even if you want, you can add another sheet with the name test scenarios, and you can specify all these scenarios in that particular sheet. So I want you to try out to write test scenario for this FS002 and also test cases for TS002. So it will give you two test cases. This will, I mean, it depends upon you. How many scenarios you want to write for the second requirement? You can write so many number of scenarios. It is up to you. And just try writing these different combinations and get back to me or send them to me. I'll review those test cases and test scenarios. We will discuss about different changes to be done to that particular document. Any more questions in this test design? Or do you want to try out first and come up with the questions? I think that would be better because you will have a lot of questions when you try writing test cases and test scenarios. So just try writing in normal English. That's it. So I hope you understand this particular scenarios. So I'll just send you this document. Try writing scenarios for the second requirement and try writing test cases for the second scenario. If you are interested, you can try out some more additional examples as well. Anyway, you will be working on another assignment on requirements, scenarios, test cases. Don't worry, you will be working on another assignment. But for today, this is your assignment. And in the next assignment, I'll give you one FSD and I'll ask you to write the test cases for it. So in the next class, we will see how to execute these test cases and how to report defects. So we will see one defect tracking tool and we will try to report the defect using that defect tracking tool. So that's it for today. Thanks everyone. Have a good night.